The Environmental Resources Committee to order. We'll start with item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please remain standing for a moment of silence and reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on to item number 4, approval of the January 7th minutes. Motion approved be in order. Motion by Supervisor Kroll, second by Supervisor Drabek. Supervisor Drabek.
I was asked about public comment.
Did I skip over that? Oh, I did. Sorry about that. Let's do this motion first because I've got an outstanding motion. So motion was made by Kroll. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, motion carries. All right, item number 3, public comment, 15-minute limit. Staff, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
I don't believe anybody was signed up, just people that were interested in one of the items on the agenda, but not interested for comment.
Is the item that they're interested in one of the rezones?
It would be for one of the town ordinance amendments. So it would be for the Ringel ordinance amendment. They wrote on there that they were only interested in speaking if called upon, so.
Michael here, are you from Cedar Corp? We have Eric Paul who called in from Cedar Corp. We do have some technical questions in relation to anything the board may have related to that subject.
I wouldn't consider that under general public comment, and they have special knowledge of the issue. We can deal with that when we get to that item. Okay, so seeing as no one is signed up for public comment, or general comments, we'll move on to item number 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review, possible actions, and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have 5A, 1 through 3. I'd ask that anybody joining us electronically that is not speaking, please mute yourself. Those in attendance who are using electronic devices, please silence them so we avoid interruptions. Marathon County ERC is meeting in public hearing on the location, plan, specifications, and purpose of the following projects, 5A, 1 through 3. Members of the committee, we have Marilyn Band, our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association representative, Supervisor Ungers, Tom Miller, our agricultural interest representative, Supervisor Seefeld, Supervisor Kroll, Supervisor Drabek, Vice Chair Ritter, and then myself, Chair Langenhahn of the ERC. We also have staff present, which we may call on as needed to help us through the rezone process. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws and must apply the laws as written. The purpose of the committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards of the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker, rural residential to rural estate, town of Frankfort. And we're going to start with the staff report, which will be provided by Garrett. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed, sir.
All right, this is for Tim Brubaker, petition to rezone land, staff report, February 4th, 2025, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owners are Tim Brubaker at 107012 Huckleberry Road, Colby, Wisconsin, 54421, and Andrew Walker at 110600 County Road N, Colby, Wisconsin, 54421. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on the north side of County Road N and just west of the intersection of Hazelnut Road and County Road N. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17, zoning code to rezone lands from RR rural residential to RE rural estate, described as all of Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map 19613, and part of the southeast quarter of Section 18, Township 28 North, Range 3 East, Town of Frankfort. The area proposed to be rezoned to RE rural estate is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as listed. The Town of Frankfort Town Board met on January 13th, 2025. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee is meeting today, February 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On January 13th, 2025, the Town of Frankfort Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? All right, thank you, Garrett. We'll move on to public testimony, and seeing as I have no one signed up to testify for any of these applications, I'm going to call once for each of these for in favor, opposed, and as interested, just in case somebody joins us in the meantime, between when we started this meeting and to the point we've gotten to now. In addition, anyone wishing to provide testimony to the committee that's in person, please approach the microphone at the back of the room and provide your testimony. So we'll get started here. And also anybody joining us electronically, just unmute yourself and you'll be able to provide testimony that way. All right, so anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. All right, seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing for item 5A1 now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. I think a motion to approve here would be in order. Motion by Supervisor Drabek, Supervisor Drabek, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Tim Brubaker from rural residential to rural estate based on the findings of fact as presented by staff, conclusions of law, and the town recommendation.
Motion by Drabek, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 5A2. Garrett?
All right, this is for David Falkowski Sr., petition to rezone land, staff report February 4th, 2025 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is David Falkowski Sr., located at 201-808 Galvin Ave, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Property owner is Rome Properties LLC, located at 201650 State Highway 97, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Area proposed to be rezoned is located at the intersection of State Highway 97 and Galvin Lane. The petition of David J. Falkowski Sr. on behalf of Rome Properties LLC to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from RR rural residential to C commercial located in part of the southeast quarter of Section 28, Township 26 North, Range 3 East, and the northeast quarter of Section 33, Township 26 North, Range 3 East, Town of McMillan. Parcel number is listed. The Town of McMillan Town Board met on December 30th, 2024. Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, February 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On December 30th, 2024, the Town of McMillan Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? All right. Thank you. Moving on to public testimony, calling once for each of these. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. No one else wishes to testify if no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on David Falkowski Sr. on behalf of Rome Properties LLC, rural residential to commercial town of McMillan, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply standards of zoning ordinance. I think a motion to approve here would be in order. Supervisor Seefeld?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion for the petition of David J. Falkowski Sr. on behalf of Rome Property LLC to amend the General Code of Ordinance from Marathon County, Chapter 17, Code to rezone land from RR to rural residential to C commercial in the town of McMillan, and to forward the whole conclusions of law and move it to the county board. Thank you.
Motion by Seefeld. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 5A3. Garrett?
All right, so this is for David and Brenda Kuhn. You'll notice that there are some changes as far as when the town board met, because we did receive the resolution. I did provide a printout there of that resolution. So this is for David and Brenda Kuhn, petition to rezone land, staff report February 4th, 2025 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is David and Brenda Kuhn, residing at 184-846 Elm Road, Eland, Wisconsin, 54427. Property owners are the same. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Elm Road between State Highway 49 and the Marathon County line. The petition of David and Brenda Kuhn to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from UR urban residential and RR rural residential to RE rural estate located in the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter and the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 24, Township 27 North, Range 10 East, Town of Elderon. Parent parcel numbers is listed. Town of Elderon Town Board met on January 7th, 2025. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee is meeting today, February 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On January 7th, 2025, the Town of Elderon Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? All right, thank you, sir. Public testimony. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. All right, seeing and hearing none. If no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on item 5A3, David and Brenda Kuhn, urban residential and rural residential to rural estate, town of Elderon, now closed. Committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Lastly, I think motion to approve here would also be in order. Anybody like to make that motion, Supervisor Seifelt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion for the petition of David and Brenda Kuhn to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code, to rezone land from UR Urban Residential and RR Rural Residential to RE Rural Estate in the town of Eldon, and to approve the conclusions of law and forward it to the county board.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 5B, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin statute 60.62 sub 3. We have B1, Town of Weston repealing chapter 94 and adopting and recreating a new chapter 94. Looks like Shad's going to give us the summary here.
All right, so the town of Weston is proposing to repeal their current zoning code, which is chapter 94, in their ordinances, and then they're recreating chapter 94. They did include everything they needed to the county, including the public notices, the draft of the ordinance, the ordinance from the town, as well as we did do a review of it, and the county or the department didn't find anything of concern. This is something that anytime a non-county zone town has an ordinance update, it needs to go through the committee level. Once they approve it at the board level, it has to go through and get approved by this committee as well as the county board. I'd be happy to try and address any questions. They did have a list in the packet regarding the amendments that they did make to the ordinance.
Did we ask for that, or did they provide that on their own, the list of changes?
I believe they provided that one on their own. Normally, we just require kind of a marked up draft or the draft that they passed, but they provided that on their own.
Yeah, that's good. All right, any questions for Shad? All right, approve and send this to the county board like the other changes? Okay.
Yep.
Anybody like to make that motion? Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the town of Weston adopting their new Chapter 94 zoning ordinance.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. 5B2, Town of Ringgold, Town Zoning Ordinance Update, Solar Energy Systems and Wind Energy Systems Ordinance. Shad.
All right, just pulling it up here. Looks like the bookmark was broke, so it might just take me a sec here. We'll get there. So I can just get started. The town of Ringel did submit a ordinance change regarding wind and solar. I know we have a few representatives from the town of Ringel here that can kind of speak to their ordinance a little bit, should the committee choose. We did do a review. The department did do a review. There are certain areas of the draft or the ordinance that's in the packet that are not in line with PSC, which if you guys remember, there are certain regulations regarding wind and solar that they can't be more restrictive than the state. A few of the items would be requiring systems that are under PSC's jurisdiction, which would be systems over 100 megawatts. Essentially, the ordinance that they have presented require them to get permitting through the town. That's something that's more restrictive than the state, as well as requiring developers agreements. Those are found in their ordinance as requirements. However, those are outside of what the state says they can do. I'm sure the town representatives that are here would be willing to kind of speak towards their ordinance again if the committee would like to bring them in.
Before we get to that point, why don't we take a few questions? Well, if there are any questions for staff, why don't we take those at this time, and we'll follow the pattern for rezones where we'll do questions for staff, and then we'll sort of open things to have a discussion with the representatives from the town of Ringel. So I guess I have a question for you, Shad. Did you review this with Corp Council?
We did talk about it and have discussions about it. I did have a conversation with Mike regarding it, so yes.
Okay, and the Corp Council, you share those concerns, correct?
That's correct. Shad outlined them very well. Those are the same concerns that we both identified, and we did talk through those with representatives from the town as well. I would say that they were very willing to take the committee's feedback, and if changes were necessary, it seemed like they were open to that, at least in the conversation that we had. But yeah, those were the concerns that we both identified.
Okay. All right. Well, we can, any other questions for staff at this time? All right. I will now turn to the representatives from the town of Ringel. So you say plural. I've got Michael Dombeck, and is there a representative from somewhere?
Cedar Corp, I believe, is online. I believe he's still online.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep, he's there.
So yeah, Michael, if you'd want to approach the back of the room with the microphone. So, and Michael, what is your relationship with the town of Ringel besides being a resident?
Planning and zoning chairman.
Got it. Okay. And then Cedar Corp is the,
So Cedar Corp was consulted to help write our ordinances and some zoning administration help for us. And so Cedar Corp was the author with our support and input for these two ordinances. As you know, Ringel redid their ordinances in 2022, presented to the board here. And as we progress along to try to be proactive, a couple key things, there's solar and wind. So we wanted to work to get those two into our ordinances, and that's why we're here today to discuss that.
okay, that makes sense. So other questions from the committee? Otherwise, I've got a couple. Okay. So, and this would be for the gentleman from Cedar Corp. What is his name, Shad? Sorry.
I believe it's Eric.
Eric, so either Eric or Michael. It sounds like there are some concerns from our staff regarding the legality of, it sounds like a couple sections. Are you open to changing the language so that those concerns are addressed so that we can continue this forward to the county board?
Yes, let me speak first, Eric, and then I'll let you have an option to respond. So in that order that was prepared, there's, for example, the large-scale permitting, which we don't want to overrun the state statute. There is a notation in there, but the large-scale, that local restrictions on large-scale solar energy systems may be limited as they may be affected by the state statute provisions. So we are aware that state statutes govern, but when Eric from Cedar Corp worked with Marathons County Michael for council on this. Some of the discussion was, the thought was that Ringgold had wanted the opportunity with the applicants of potential large solar farm or wind to basically say something, have that conversation with them versus say nothing. So I guess, Eric, maybe I'll let you proceed a little bit. And in regards to the openness, yes, if we need to discuss some language to that, we are open to that.
Okay. So Eric, if you'd want to provide some additional information, that'd be great too.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope you can hear me okay. Cedar Corporation has worked with a number of clients over the years regarding solar and wind regulation and ordinance. We're certainly familiar with the state statutes and requirements and authorities that are laid out there, and particularly with PSC 128. But we have found that positioning our clients, like Mike said, to say something versus saying nothing with regards to what their local desires might be about those large systems puts them in a better position to work with energy developers who might come and seek a project. Our experience is that the Public Service Commission has done a much better job in recent years when reviewing these types of proposals of large-scale renewables, of listening to local government's concerns, and even where appropriate, they've acknowledged and integrated permit conditions at the local level, which help to address those types of issues. So the town is certainly fully aware that some of the provisions as mentioned in the ordinance will basically be up to the PSC, and the town knows it does not have that authority. But again, this approach really puts developers on notice of what the town's desires and wishes are, even though PSC has jurisdiction, and it's done in hopes that they comply. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with the Corporation Council and staff about those. And in light of that, if these are concerns that the county is adamant on changing, I think there's certainly ways to address that, whether it's the addition of additional notations in there regarding acknowledgement of PSC 128, or perhaps even softening the language using recommend versus require, for instance. But I think it's to the town's benefit that those statements are in the ordinance the way they are, because it does give them a little bit of leverage, even though they don't have authority necessarily. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I would like to see the county work with the town to find language that is agreeable from both local government units. I think that given this committee's past review of another town's, I believe that was a zoning ordinance. It was the town of Reprock in Marathon County, and we had extensive discussions about that ordinance's agreement with PSC 128. I think that, this committee in the past has placed a heightened focus on ensuring that this is consistent with PSC 128. And in addition to that, I guess I would just ask Eric, have any of the ordinances that you've been involved with that have contained similar language been challenged ever by a developer, like in the court of law?
Not to my knowledge that they have not been challenged. I'm trying to think, because I'm not the only one who works with this in some of our clients. We've got other staff that do, but I'm not sure the provisions have been invoked.
Okay.
And that they've had large scale systems, but it's been done more as preventative, if you will.
Has this been provided to the town's insurance company for feedback? Because if there was a challenge and, insurance gets involved, they would have to provide an attorney to defend it. I'm just wondering if their insurance company is okay with it too.
To my knowledge, Eric, I am not aware that our town clerk has passed this on to insurance.
Sure. And that's not necessarily a requirement. I was just interested to hear further legal analysis of it. So thank you. All right. Marilyn.
What are the major changes that you have that is different than the PSC 128? Specifically, what are the differences?
Well, I'll just take the lead on this, and I'll turn it over to you, Michael and Eric. But I think Shad had summarized those earlier, where it was the permitting and then also the requirement of the joint developer agreement, which, Eric, you made an excellent point earlier about, one simple change could be for the developers agreement, it could be, instead of requiring, recommending, right? I think there's some groundwork that could be made there between the county and the town, just in that section.
Was there any difference in noise and distance and things like that that is different than what?
And so there, I
What
think
is-
that's like three people that could respond to that, because we've got our staff and then you and Eric. But Michael, if you wanted to take the lead, feel free to go ahead.
I guess I'll let Eric take the lead on that.
Okay.
I know we referenced their statutes, but
Okay.
Eric, do you want to pursue that further?
I'm just scanning the ordinance here. Give me just a second quickly. But I don't believe that there are any standards in there specifically mentioned that would exceed the PSC in terms of distances or things of that nature, dimensional requirements. I think the issue mostly revolves around a couple of the broader things that relate to the developer agreement and general permitting, as was mentioned before. But to my knowledge, timeframes, distances, any mention of those things should be consistent, or they're just not mentioned specifically in those cases.
Okay, thank you. And then Shad or Michael, did you have anything to add?
Sure. I think our analysis was consistent with the towns as well. There, the big difference between this ordinance and the previous ordinance that I think Chair Langenhan you were referencing is there aren't any of those standards that have been addressed or exceeded. So I think there's a pretty wide gulf between this proposed ordinance and that ordinance that was not passed. This one has those limited differences, which I would say contrast with PHC 128. They don't clearly contradict language, but they either speak where PSC 128 hasn't, or I guess slide a little bit over what PSC 128 covers. So there was I think a pretty obvious effort here to meet the legal standards at the state level. Shad and I knew from the previous discussion that those concerns about exceeding the state statutes would be something that this committee would have. So we wanted to point those out so the committee could have a full review of that.
Okay. Other questions from the committee? Otherwise, I have a path forward that I'd like to raise, but any other questions? All right. I think one path forward we have here is to have our staff, Mike and Shad, continue to work with Michael and Eric to bring that together so that we can get it to the county board. Okay?
Understood.
All right. So, Michael, thank you for taking your time to come here. Eric, same to you as well. Thanks for coming here, and hope to see you back here soon. Okay?
you.
All right.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Moving on to 5B3 Town of Wayne Comprehensive Plan Update. Shad.
All right, so the town of Wayne is updating their comprehensive plan. They did submit to us all the required information. I did want to point out one thing to the committee as well, though. In their resolution or their ordinance that they had passed through the town board, it does not have the town board supervisor signatures on there. We did contact the town, and they actually just got back to us today. They're planning to have their supervisors sign it. It was kind of an oversight at their last meeting to sign this, but they're going to be signing it on Monday. So there's kind of two paths forward, essentially. Other than this, everything that they've supplied to us is all good. But the committee could choose to wait till next month to approve this, or you could approve it based on the fact that, and with the condition that the supervisor sign the ordinance and provide it to us, and have that just be a condition on your approval.
Can we approve something related to land use on a condition?
So I did have a conversation with Mike and he did, or Corp Counsel, and he did say that it is something that you guys could put a condition on to approve it. It's completely up to you guys. If you want to wait, that's also fine. We could also do a follow-up, just letting you guys know at the next meeting that we did receive it. But yeah, it'd be an approval with the condition that they provide us with that signature or those signatures on the ordinance. We do have the minutes from the meeting. They did approve this.
Okay.
So it's not like we're going into this blind, like they didn't have the conversations at all. It's really just the signatures on that ordinance that they forward to us.
Okay, well, in this case, I'm fine if it's approved on a condition of getting those signatures. I don't know what the rest of the committee's feelings are. Marilyn?
Can they come in and sign those, or do that have to be signed at another town board meeting?
So I think their plan is, since they're already meeting this coming Monday, I think they're planning, that's why they're planning to do it on Monday, is because they have already a meeting set up for that and they'll all be there. But essentially, this already went through their town board. It's just kind of the final signing.
Thank you.
Okay, so like I said, I'm fine approving that on the condition. Anybody want to make that motion? Supervisor Kroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the Town of Wheaton resolution on the condition that the town board have the signatures in place by next Monday.
Can I just have you amend that? Just say like by county board this month, something like that, you know?
Sure. I will restate the motion just to
Sure.
clarify. So I will make a motion to approve the updated Town of Wheaton resolutions on the condition that they are signed by the next county board session. Is it okay?
Is that okay, Mike? Think?
I think that makes sense.
All right. Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drayback. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. C, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have none. D, review and possible action, Green Tree Meadows plat, Town of Stettin, City of Wausau. Garrett.
All right, so this is for a plat for Green Tree Meadows in Town of Stettin. Preliminary and final plat, staff report from the Environmental Resource Committee, February 4th, 2025. So the plat requirements for survey, the plat complies with Chapter 236.34 of the Wisconsin statutes, Chapter A-E7 of the Wisconsin Administrative Code, and Chapter 18 of the Marathon County Code of Ordinances regarding subdivisions and mapping. For zoning, a portion of the plat is in the Town of Stettin and is town zone. This portion is the 10-foot strip of outlots in the northwestern part of the plat. Environmental conditions, stormwater management plan was submitted to the City of Wausau, erosion control plan with SWMP. Wetland areas have been identified on the plat. Sanitary sewer will be provided by the City of Wausau. No improvements are proposed on the outlots being approved by Marathon County. And for access, all proposed outlots will be conveyed to the owners of the adjacent lots upon sale. The City of Wausau and the Town of Stettin are aware of the outlots and approve this layout. Some notes, most of this plat is in the City of Wausau jurisdiction. Only the 15 narrow outlots in the northwestern portion of this plat are in the Town of Stettin and under the review authority of Marathon County. The Green Tree Meadows plat was approved by the Town of Stettin, the City of Wisconsin, and the State of Wisconsin Board of Administration as required by statute prior to the submittal of the preliminary and final plats to Marathon County. Because of the limited scope of review and previous approvals by other authorities, the preliminary and final plats are being presented to the committee for consideration at this meeting. Both approvals will require separate motions and votes, beginning with the preliminary and followed by the final plat. Recommendation from the county surveyor. Based on the information provided, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee approve the proposed preliminary and final plats of the Green Tree Meadows. Let's get this set up a little bit better. Okay, right there. All right. So if you look on the screen, you'll see this narrow strip starting with that one lot in the center. That's what the Environmental Resource Committee and the county have jurisdiction over.
We can take the preliminary and the final at the same time?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
They just have to be, like noted in the staff report, two separate votes.
Oh, all right. Any questions for staff of the plat? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed that the town of Stettin is under the farmland preservation zoning. Was any of that land taken up in the farmland preservation side?
I'm not aware of any of that's being taken up. So town of Stettin regulates their own farmland preservation.
Okay.
So we at the county don't do it. So I would think by them approving it that they've considered that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. So two separate motions to approve this. First one would be to move to approve the preliminary. Second would be move to approve the final.
That's correct. And the only thing we're waiting on is to get the original plat back from the state for your
Okay.
signature. So
If
we
I
don't have
remember-
that today.
If I remember correctly, this would not go to the county board. We have the authority to approve this all.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for item 5D1? Supervisor Kroll? If you'd like to make a motion, that'd be great.
Anyways, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Green Tree Meadows preliminary plat in the town of Stettin.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Now I'll need a motion to approve the final plat. Supervisor Draybeck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd make a motion to approve the final plat of Green Tree Meadows, Town of Sistine.
All right, motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Then I gotta sign the kind of goofy looking map thing, right?
Correct. Once we get it back from the state.
Okay, sounds good. All right, 2, updates to the zoning fee schedule for special event permits. Chad?
All right, so as you guys are aware, as we did, county board did approve 12.04, the assemblies ordinance. Chapter 17 also has provisions with special event in it. So our county zone towns also have a section in our zoning code that apply to special or temporary events. They don't necessarily have the number or the threshold that 12.04 has. But so what we wanted to do in the ordinance or in the fee schedule is essentially make applicants that qualify for the 12.04 large assemblies ordinance exempt from fee for the special event under 17, because we're going to be doing a review on it regardless. It'd be a fee that we're already recovering our costs in the fee of the assemblies permit. It wouldn't exempt them from a permit, but it would exempt them from a fee of the Chapter 17 permit. So then they would only be required to pay the large assembly fee versus the large assembly fee plus the Chapter 17 zoning permit fee. So we were just adding a note in there to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good with me. If they're already paying for the special event permit under the large assemblies ordinance, it makes sense not to have them pay for this one. So, okay. Any questions from the committee? All right, anybody like to make a motion to approve? Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the updates to the zoning fee schedule for special event permits.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Kroll. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving to 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports in committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning, zoning, park, rec, and forestry. Under CPZ, we have 6A1, continued discussion on potential amendments to animal waste ordinance information gathering updates. And is Kirsty here? Yes, Kirsty and Matt.
All right. Hello, everyone. We just wanted to come before you this month to provide you with a few extra little tidbits of information as some follow-up items to the meeting that we had last month. So what we did is we just, reviewed the video from last month and tried to put together a list of some of the common questions and concerns that we heard, and just wanted to bring you some additional data this month to hopefully help you continue to make decisions. We've discussed we're not at a point where we're ready to make firm decisions, but we're still just kind of in this exploration phase of having a discussion and also getting some input from key stakeholders around the county. So that's what we have been as busy as bees doing since we saw you last, so we can just report some additional information to you here today. So if you were not at last month's meeting, I do encourage you to flip back through some of the slides, because it was some good information that was covered. We also put the January meeting slides at the very bottom of this month's slides, just because we did propose a structured system in our meeting packet last month for winter spreading restrictions of Marathon County farms. So if you need a refresher of what we proposed, you can flip about halfway through our presentation for today, and you can see those slides from last month as well. So last month we did tell you that we were suggesting pivoting away from using animal unit categories to propose animal waste ordinance updates and watershed-based geographical restrictions. So after doing a lot of research, we really felt it was best just to go with something else, and that was going to provide a lot of difficulties if we had to constantly be knowing exactly how many animal units each farm was at. We also quantified the amount of dairy farms in Marathon County and how many farms without storage this may affect. So we did hear some initial concern about how many farms did not have storage, and we made that commitment to you last month that we were going to really take a deep dive into the demographics of those farms. And I really want to give full credit here to my coworker Matt Repking, because I do not know anyone else that can get into data as much as he can, and he could probably tell you what's going on at just about every single farm, so that we can be well equipped to give you as much information as you need as our decision makers here. So we kind of felt after last month that some of the biggest concerns were, what are the demographics of these farms? Because we had very high level data for you last month, but now we can get you the specifics. We also heard your concerns about the cost of new waste storage systems for folks that don't currently have any storage. What would this be looking like if they had to potentially purchase that? And then we also heard you tell us that you really wanted and valued input from stakeholders and farm groups, as do we. So we started reaching out to them. I'll discuss that later on in the presentation. So from there, I'll turn it over to Matt. He'll go through some of our findings, and then I'll help wrap up the presentation when he's done.
So like Kirsty mentioned, I'll go through kind of the demographics of the farms that we talked. Last month we said it was approximately half of the farms that we thought would be affected. Well, after I dug into it a little bit more, that base number of dairy farms is about 348. We looked through the list. We did some analysis on GIS, and what we came up with was there was about 198 farms that have some sort of manure storage, and there's about 150 that don't. So, originally when we talked a month ago, we thought that split was closer to 50-50, but now you can kind of see where we're laying there. So if we take that, when we go through these next few slides, I'll kind of go through slide by slide and make sure everybody understands it, because it is a lot of data that we're going to go through here. So if we take that group of 150 farms, that daily haul group that don't have manure storage, we'll use that as our subset group of 22 farms. And what that number is that's the group of farms in that have a nutrient management plan. So that's the data that we used for our subsample. And in that subsample, the number of cows range from 25 to about 180.
So if we use that as our average, that's about 77 cows per herd for our subsample. And all these farms had some type of young stock, so they had a couple different manure sources. So in that subsample group of 22 farms, none of them had manure storage. And out of our 150 group, that's the only ones that had nutrient management plans. So that's about a 15% subsample. Now, when you look at statistics, usually when you do a subsample, you want to be at least 10% or greater, so you have confidence in the data that we're using. So we're slightly above that, so I feel like it is a pretty good subsample that we're using. Now, when we look at farms that have nutrient management plans, at 198, 98% of them have a nutrient management plan already. So switching back to that subsample of 22 farms, 9 of those have liquid manure or slurry listed for their manure type. So that means of that group, about 41% would be potentially affected. That would not be able to spread manure during the months of February and March for what we're proposing for those banned months. Now, some of the manure may be borderline. That's one thing to keep in mind because they might list it as a semi-solid, but it might actually be a slurry. So there could be a little bit of wiggle room within that data, but we're just using the best data that we have available, and that's from the nutrient management plans that are written either by agronomists or by the farmers themselves. And if we look at that list of 22 farms, 18 of them listed winter spreading either during the year of 2023 or 2024. So there is a lot of manure being applied by this group during the winter months that don't have manure storage.
So those 9 of 22 farms, what were the ranges in cattle that they had?
So if we go back to our original subset group here, cattle range from 25 all the way up to 180.
Yep, but I'm just talking about the 9 that had nutrient management. Or, sorry, what was it? The 9 that had, keep scrolling. 9 of 22 that have liquid. That's what I'm curious about. What were those ranges?
Those were the larger farms. in
Those
that
were the
list.
larger
So they
farms.
would be the ones that are probably more from 80 to that 180.
Yeah, because I would be surprised if the 25 cow,
So those guys are
farm.
solid manure.
That's what I would think. Okay. Thank you.
Or a pack manure of some sort.
Sure.
So if we continue on that list of the Daily Hall Farms 150 group and we extrapolate that out, 41%, we're estimating that approximately 62 farms could be affected that don't have manure storage with a winter spreading ban. That would need to find some type of solution, either rent a manure storage or potentially invest in infrastructure to store manure. And as far as total animals go in Marathon County, about 20% of total milk cows are from farms that daily haul manure, and about 80 are from farms that have manure storage. So the 20, it's a pretty significant group that daily haul manure yet. So this map just shows in green farms that have manure storage, and the red are farms without manure storage. So you can it's very difficult to see, but it is spread throughout the county. So just some numbers for manure production. Average 1,400 pound dairy cow, which is kind of average size, maybe even on the small side now, produces about 32 gallons of manure per day. And this information is from SNAP Plus, which is a program that the majority of farms in Wisconsin use to do nutrient management. So their data is kind of middle of the road as far as manure production. But if we look at this over our different farm sizes on the low end, for 25 cows, for the 60 days, we're looking at about 48,000 gallons of manure. For our average size of daily haul farm, 77 cows, we're looking at about 150,000 gallons of manure. And for 180 cow dairy, for 60 days, we're looking at almost 350,000 gallons of manure. So that's a pretty significant amount of manure that's being daily hauled at 350,000 gallons.
So some of you may have been wondering as well, you know, if we can ask for 60 days where we're coming together as a county saying for 60 days we're going to work together, come up with a compromise. We're not going to spread any liquid manure in our 2 highest risk periods of time in the calendar year. What type of phosphorus reduction could that produce for our county? What type of water quality improvement could we see? So we went ahead and calculated how much phosphorus we could potentially be reducing for 60 days. So we used the average of a 77 cow herd for this calculation. And we times that by 62 farms, so we knew that was over 9 million gallons of manure that would likely not be hitting the landscape in that 60 days. So if we count on that 9 million gallons of manure not being land spread for those 60 days, we would see almost 16,000 pounds of phosphorus not running off into our waters. This is a very conservative amount that has been calculated because these calculations don't include additional phosphorus for farms that have storage. So we still have a lot of farms that have manure storage that are spreading in those months due to convenience reasons. So, and that's a lot of farms. We haven't calculated how many folks are still doing that, but that number is probably far greater than 16,000 pounds of phosphorus. We converted that amount to what it would cost one of our wastewater treatment facilities to remove it from the water. It costs our wastewater treatment facilities $200 per pound of phosphorus to remove it. And we really have not spent a lot of time talking about the impact of this on our, what we call our point sources in Marathon County. Those are industries or municipal settings that have a permit from the DNR to be a point source polluter, meaning a wastewater treatment facility or a cheese factory that has a permit to have a pipe in one of our streams or rivers that they can put a certain amount of pounds of phosphorus back into that waterway. So we've had discussions with this about the DNR because we have wanted to really try to wrap our minds around, you know, is this just an agricultural issue in Marathon County? What does this also mean to more of our urban folks that, you know, are just paying municipal water bills and aren't affected by maybe what's happening more on the rural landscape? And the DNR did tell us that one important part of the conversation is that we have to get our water to a certain level in our county and have a certain amount of phosphorus that meets the total maximum daily load in the Wisconsin River. And ultimately, if we're not able to meet those water quality goals, what the state of Wisconsin does is they put more of the burden on our point sources to remove more of that phosphorus from our water. So if we can't get our reductions down to where they need to be to meet state standards, they're going to go back to our wastewater treatment facilities, many who are already struggling to make payments to meet the phosphorus goals. And they have unfortunately had to put that burden back on their municipal clients in their small municipalities. They're going to just have to remove more phosphorus at the end of the day if we can't reduce our non-point source phosphorus. That's what we call phosphorus that comes from the landscape that we can't necessarily put a point on where it's coming from. So for 60 days, we're talking, you know, it would cost over $3 million for one of our wastewater treatment facilities to remove this level of phosphorus. And you'll find, I forgot to hand it out before the meeting, but we have some letters of support to hand out as examples today that we've already received. And you'll find in that packet that the Wisconsin Rural Water Association did submit a letter to Chair Gibbs and Chair Langenhahn, saying that they do fully support Marathon County's pursuit of these the updates to our animal waste ordinance because they have seen the impact that increased levels of phosphorus in our waters, you know, have put onto our wastewater treatment facilities in these rural areas as well. So one other thing to address is the cost of new waste storage systems. When we had a conversation last month, we heard the concern of what would this mean if someone had to, build a $500,000 plus storage facility. And so we did use current numbers and costs here in early 2025 of what things are costing to put together some numbers for you that will hopefully ease your mind once you see what more of a realistic cost would be. At the end of the day, now that we know that the average herd size is about 77 cows, they're just not going to need to build a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 facility for 60 days. That's just, it's not necessary. There are much more affordable options based on their size. So we priced out 2 different types of new waste storage systems. Keep in mind, this is if people would choose to construct a new waste storage system. That does not have to happen in many cases. In some of our first presentations on this subject matter, we provided you with a map of all of the empty waste storage facilities in Marathon County. Because remember, we've gone from 1,500 dairy farms 30 years ago to now 350. So we have lots and lots of government-funded waste storage facilities sitting idle in our county that would be wonderful to use those taxpayer dollars still in those facilities and have people rent those facilities as well. So if we're talking a concrete storage for 25 cows, and all the dimensions are there for you to look at, we're looking at $40,000 to $50,000. For 77 cows, our average herd size, 60 to 80,000. And then on the large herd size end of our spectrum, 180 cows, $140,000 to $160,000. So these are concrete storage systems, so they're going to be more expensive than what we'll talk about next. Here's a picture of what that would look like. Matt, do you have anything to add about a concrete system?
No, this is the more expensive option. This is assuming that soils in the farmer's area wouldn't allow for an earthen manure storage. So this is kind of worst case scenario that they'd have to put in some kind of concrete vertical wall. Generally, these are the most expensive option for a manure storage. Now there's different type of concrete structures, so this is kind of just a bare bones concrete vertical wall structure. When you get into some of the more specialized structures, then it can get much more expensive. But like I said, this is kind of a simplified concrete vertical wall structure. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles as like some of you may have heard of us talk in the past about like pipping structures. It's not like that.
Yeah, for many of these structures too, there are different sources of grant funding available as well. Our program, along with many USDA agencies, are used to working with farmers for putting in these types of structures. So then if someone were to consider an earthen storage structure, so no concrete is brought in, a pit is excavated according to standard and then lined with appropriate clay soils that meet a certain standard of quality. What we have going for us with an earthen lagoon is many of our soils in Western Marathon County do have clay. And so clay can oftentimes either be on site or brought in from not that far away. So this calculation is for an earthen lagoon for 180 cows. So this is the biggest storage structure that someone should need because this is the high end of the herd size. So a price estimate for that for 500,000 gallons would be $25,000 to $35,000. So if we were to make that even smaller for a smaller herd size, we're looking at a substantial lower cost as well. I think one good analogy of looking at the cost of this, which I just can't seem to break away from, is we're looking at kind of the cost of a new septic system, a new septic system for a rural household, or even cheaper perhaps if it's, on the small end of the herd size compared to what's needed. So I personally felt that it was encouraging to see these cost estimates, knowing that, if we were to move forward saying, okay, we're going to implement this in 3 to 5 years, that most businesses should be able to either set aside some funding to use it to invest in this infrastructure or work with an agency to plan for the future and get some type of grant as well. Here's an example of an earth and waste storage.
So for the earth and one assumption, for both of them actually, the assumptions that were made was that these wouldn't have a transfer system from the barn essentially to pump it out to the storage. More or less, it's a storage vessel. Transfer systems can get pricey, so you can add additional money on top of that, depending on what type of transfer system they would want to go with. But these are essentially just short-term storage, so there wouldn't be transfer, and they would just pull up to the side of it and dump the manure into it and go on with their day.
Okay, so lastly, just to give you an update.
Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I missed the memo. Is these storage systems 2 months?
Yes.
That's 2 months?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah. Good
Marilyn,
question.
do you have something?
I have a question. You know, there's not as many farms out there, and some of them did have manure storage pits. And I don't know how many of those were closed down because they were not used. I don't know if it's possible that, you know, if it's close enough by, could they go and empty into those? Or even if there is a larger facility, that they could have, you know, transferred to a larger facility? I don't know, instead of them having to spend all that money just for those 2 months. Is there anything like that? Because I know we had a manure pit at one time and no cows any longer, so it had to be closed off. And so are there other ones out there that they don't have the dairy anymore because there's not as many ones farming, that there's still pits out there that might be reasonable distance that they could use? I don't know.
Yeah. We do know, Marilyn.
That's definitely an
Yeah.
option.
Absolutely.
So Marilyn inspired a couple of questions from myself. Do we have an inventory of those inactive systems, and do we have an idea of what the cost of rehabilitation would be for those systems to become active?
We do have an inventory
Okay.
that was from a year and a half, 2 years ago. There was just a little bit over 100 idle manure storages in the county. Don't have an estimate. Some of them, you know, you could just go right into and use. Other ones, they would probably have to have some sort of update done to them. At that point of making updates to some of these pits though, then that falls under what the current standards are for waste storages. So they would have to be brought up to what code are. Now, if they're operational and they're fine the way they are, they can just be used.
Is any of that work eligible for cost share through a program through the county?
Not right now.
Okay.
But in the last meeting, we did pitch a simple little idea of potentially using either a grant we apply for or maybe some type of county cost share program to kind of have an incentive payment of like, what do we say, a penny a gallon or something to, like if Farmer Joe rented manure storage from someone, to give him that incentive of like a penny a gallon of how much manure he is taking to his neighbor to rent that pit. So that'd be like $5,000 a year or something. But we see examples all the time of farmers already doing that. And it ends up being a win-win because someone who's not using it loves the extra, you know, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year that they weren't getting from not renting it out. And then the farmer that's using their pit, it's a huge win for them because they don't have to build or expand, you know, their pit. So we love that scenario. We would anticipate it would play a huge part in the solution to this. And who doesn't love seeing, you know, I am not exaggerating when I say many of these pits were taxpayer-funded pits, you know, paid for by the state of Wisconsin from either DNR or the Department of Agriculture. So we love to see that stuff reused over and over again. Yeah. So lastly here, I'm just giving you an update on some of the stakeholders and groups that we have reached out to and had conversations with. We do still need a little bit more time to keep going. So these are just some initial conversations that we have had. We are looking forward to meeting with the Marathon County Farm Bureau next Thursday night in Marathon City at 6:30 p.m. at the bowling alley. I know there's already been some county board supervisors that have reached out and asked if they could attend as well. I know they're anticipating a good group in attendance, so I look forward to having really meaningful conversations with that group as well. Trying to do what I can to get letters or comments or emails from some of these groups. That is challenging. Sometimes I think no news is good news if no one's shouting either way or motivated either way to really submit something. So just letting you know who we've communicated with so far, and I'll, after we're done here, I'll pass out that little packet of letters of support that we've received too.
I don't mean to sound blunt, but why do we care about what the Village of Athens thinks in particular?
So we have been working with them on a project that I would love to tell you guys about at a meeting in the near future. It's a really awesome project related to their municipal wells, which unfortunately they're struggling with some high nitrates in their municipal wells. So our department has been working with them closely on that. When they heard about what we were doing here, they let us know they would like to submit a letter of support to this committee. And so we meant to delete out the individual municipalities that we met with, because we had quite a few other ones on there. We met with some townships and whatnot, but little Athens got left on there, and that's okay. But yeah, they were supportive of it, and so hopefully in the meeting packet next month we'll have a letter for you too.
Okay, thank you.
And some of these, are they always liquid, or sometimes is it a kind of a combination of liquids plus solids that they don't have the storage for in the wintertime?
It really depends on a farm by farm basis. As your farms generally get larger, the manure gets more liquidy, slurry. Most of the smaller farms, for the most part, have a packer solid type manure.
Yeah. So what we'd like to continue to do this month is just work on one-on-one outreach with some key stakeholders. We would like to do a mailing summarizing this to all of the farms affected in Marathon County. And then we'd like to hold 2 open houses in the month of February, one likely during business hours during the day, maybe like after morning chores would be done, 10 or 11, in one of our county buildings. And then we would do another one out in the western part of the county, maybe at the Country Air, or ask one of the townships like Wien or Reet Brock out there if we can crash their town hall for a party and and talk to farmers out there. And we talked just briefly about this at the Eastern Towns and Western Towns Association, and the offer still stands. If there is a township that would like us to come and give a presentation or just have a discussion, question and answer session, we would absolutely love to come out to individual town meetings as well. So just kind of keep that on all of your radars, that we're more than happy to do that.
I know a town hall that in Western Marathon County that would let you have a meeting there, and we don't charge anything for the rent.
Oh, I bet you I can guess who that is, Marilyn.
Supervisor Drabek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, this seems like a lot of stuff that you guys are trying to accomplish here. How many more staff would you need for this?
Yeah, we would not anticipate needing any additional staff.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was also wondering about these pits that you were going to have people renting. Wasn't there some law years ago that they were supposed to close those pits down if they weren't used in 3 years? Just wondering how many are available because of that. I didn't, so just wondering.
A lot of them out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have over right around 100-ish of idle manure storages. And some of them are older pits that were built before the ordinance, but there's a number of them that are built and constructed to standards, which are assets to keep on the landscape. We haven't actively required any pits to be closed. Just because if we do, then we have to make an offer a cost share, but we have been closing on average between we're right around 8 to 14 pits a year generally is what we're closing in the county. And last year, I think we were right at 10 again, so we're still actively closing manure storage as time goes on, but yeah, there is a state standard that requires that you're supposed to close it after 3 years.
So, before we have more questions and discussion, is the presentation finished?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Okay. So, other feedback, questions, Supervisor Seifelt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. About 4 years ago, I had a visit from your department to close my manure pit. And that cost to me was $300. Is that still putting on to these pits that are being closed? Is that $300 still the cost for that?
At a permit, the current permit price, I think, is like $205 now for an abandonment.
Okay. And then you talk about, 2 months storage for 77 cows. That's, 60 to 80,000, that is just for the permit, or for the pit. What about the pump, everything else that has to go in to get to that pit, if they go with a pump system? Or they're going to put it in the spreader back up to the pit and spread it into the pit? Is that kind of the idea? Or is it to put a pump system in too?
When I did the cost estimate, it was just an assumption that we weren't putting a transfer system in. So we weren't putting a pump in the barn, piping. I mean, we were looking at the lowest cost option for a, more or less just a holding structure that they would use for 2 months. Yeah, when you get into transfer systems, I mean, you're looking at pumps that can vary from, $5,000 to $15,000 for a transfer pump. And then depending on how far the stretch is in the pipe, putting it in, that and excavation and system around the barn, I mean, that could be another $20,000 to $25,000, $30,000. But we were just looking for the lowest cost option just for a structure that would hold manure, that they wouldn't have to make any modifications to their barn.
Okay. If I know dairy farmers are struggling, right? Well, I struggled all my life doing it. And it seems to me, if I was going to put, a pit in for this, I would encourage to go, 4 to 5 months. I think it would help quite a bit on the phosphorus level.
Mm-hmm.
But can a farmer with milking 70 cows afford this now? He's got to look at his situation. Okay, how many years am I going to keep doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to benefit me or not?
Right.
But when I mention, okay, if they put even above ground cement storage for a semi-solid manure, your access to the pit would have to be awful close to where your barn cleaner's coming out. Because if you have to put it in a manure spreader and back in and spread it, I got it in that manure spreader. I know where it's going. It's going to the field. It's just common sense. So I hope when you guys are out there doing this that, and most farmers know this, I just hope that when you go out to these other farms that you explain the whole situation to them, what we're trying to do with the phosphorus level, and great presentation, and thank you for giving this. I missed it last month, so
Well, we
thank you.
missed you. Thank you.
So I just want to throw a couple things out there, and Tom, I think you'd like to speak, right? Okay, so I just want to put a couple things out there. I want to echo Supervisor Seifelt that there's a lot of good information in this presentation. I've had 2 farmers contact me in the last month about this, both of which I do not believe would be affected by this change, but they nonetheless wanted to provide feedback on the ordinance. And, you know, I'm glad, I think it's on slide 7 here, where there's that subsample that was looked at where 22 of them had nutrient management plans, but that means that there's 128 that don't in that subsample. And, you know, one of my constituents told me, well, they would like to see, if this is required, that those that have nutrient management plans be exempted from the spreading ban, which would lead me to, I guess, my first question and then maybe another comment after that, and then we'll get to Tom. Is that within the authority of the county to require that all the farms within a certain range of cattle have nutrient management plans?
Mm-hmm. Nutrient management plans in Wisconsin are mandated for every farmer to have who mechanically applies nutrients to the soil. I say mechanical because if poop is fallen out of a cow's butt into a pasture, they don't necessarily need one. So where it gets complicated is in state statutes, it says you cannot force anyone to do a nutrient management plan unless you offer a bona fide offer of cost share, which in Wisconsin we offer $40 an acre for a farmer to write an initial nutrient management plan. So if we don't have enough money through the Department of Ag to do that, we get about $100,000 a year to do that in Marathon County, then we can't force someone to do it. So every year we use up all of our $100,000 asking people to do a first-time nutrient management plan. To the vast majority of our farms that we offer this cost sharing, they are thankful, they are grateful. That money is a blessing to them in their farm. We are not forcing them pen to paper to do this plan. That being said, we can use it in enforcement situations when we think a farm is maybe being irresponsible with how they're land spreading their nutrients. We can say, we really think you need to develop this plan to get a better grasp on, maybe how much they're applying on certain fields if we're seeing chronic over application of manure on certain fields. So in Marathon County, with how many farms still need a nutrient management plan, if we offered that cost share to farmers every year at $100,000, it would still take us 50 years to cost share all the nutrient management plans that are needed in this county. And we have about 60% of our acres covered in nutrient management plans. But 50 years, Matt and I won't be here. Maybe some of our young coworkers will be. Hopefully not. But that's where we're at right now. But the state of Wisconsin does say all farmers do need to have a nutrient management plan. So it doesn't have to go back to your original question. We don't have to ask, does the county have the power to do this? We can say the state of Wisconsin has already mandated that to happen.
And then, I guess my general comment, 25 cows, this is on slide 15, $40,000 to $50,000 for the tank. I don't know what milk is right now. I'm just going to assume it's $13 because it seems like it was always $13 for a long time. I don't see how a small farm like that can do an investment like this for it to really, not impact their operations significantly. I get that there's already manure storage systems out there, but this looks like this is going to put a significant burden on a lot of farmers, and I don't think my position is changing that I don't want to see this ban go into effect. So just throwing my thoughts out there. Tom, you had a point?
Yeah, a few points. I'd like to speak to the nutrient management plan and I can speak to my experience. We've done that 25 plus years ago, and for us, it was a game changer because it made us a more profitable farm. So I don't understand why more people aren't adopting it, because it helped us target where our nutrients went, whether it was commercial fertilizer or manure. Every field has different levels of fertility, and it helped us target better, so we put more on where it was needed and less on where it wasn't, and then ultimately we spent less money. So that's a positive. And the milk price actually has been as high as it's been for as long as it's been right now in my whole career. So I'm not buying that argument. And the fact that well over 50 or over 50% of the farms have made the commitment and invested in storage, that they felt it was worth it, even though it put them at a disadvantage economically to the farms that have not made that investment. So I'm struggling with this, why it's so hard to get across, so.
And I'm sure that if you're in farmland preservation, you have to have a nutrient management plan.
You got it, Marilyn. She's always selling farmland preservation all around this whole county. She's our best sales gal.
Well, I don't know about that. It's just, all I know is that if you would,
Yeah.
if it was in farmland preservation,
Yeah.
and you had to be, an owner had to be a resident of the state of Wisconsin
Yeah.
in order to get that. And if you were in farmland preservation,
Yeah.
you had to have the
Yeah.
nutrient management plan.
Yeah. But that's,
Absolutely.
we haven't even discussed farmland preservation. People who aren't in that, all they have to do is comply with our state ag standards, which most of our farms do. And you can get $10, $15 an acre to be in that program. We have hundreds of people in Marathon County that are in it. So for the folks who aren't, if they were to enroll in that program, that's another wonderful source of revenue that could help offset this and many other things.
Those plans don't go like 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's farmland pres contracts used to be 15 years and now they're 10. That just changed last year.
Chair Gibbs?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Christie. A couple of questions. So if we were to mandate non-winter spreading, would we have to offer cost sharing to these farms that are putting in facilities, as we have in the past and sometimes offered to some farms when they put in facilities? And then second, if we did go to prohibiting winter spreading, would we be required to mandate nutrient management plans on those same farms? So I guess there's two questions there.
Yeah, those are great questions. I can start, and then I'm sure Matt will have some thoughts to add too. So what we are proposing with, the majority of farms, we're asking to not spread for 60 days. So that's the big ask. That would be above the current state standard. We would adopt a local ordinance that is above the state standard. That is why we had mentioned we would have to get approval from either DNR and or DATCP to do this. So when it is adopted via a local ordinance, we are not required to offer that cost share as we would if it was just a simple state standard. So for example, if there is someone that has, let's just say, a failing barnyard that doesn't meet the runoff standards. Right now, if their facility was not a new facility in Wisconsin, and it was an existing facility that's kind of been grandfathered in, we could not force them to fix that unless we offered them cost share to fix it. So this would not be that scenario. That is the most common scenario in how conservation programs work in the state of Wisconsin. But because we are adopting this through a local ordinance, this would be a Marathon County ordinance, not a state of Wisconsin rule, we would not have to offer cost share. That being said, there are lots of grant programs available for this sort of thing as well, which through a delayed implementation period, and knowing that it likely would be about 62 farms we'd have to work with between 3 to 5 years to come up with a game plan, we feel very confident that no one would be left in the lurch in terms of wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this work? There's a lot of great programs, funding available.
Follow from Chair Gibbs, then Supervisor Rare.
So if we're not required, because it would be by ordinance and would be above and beyond state standards, would we be required, in the ordinance, would we require nutrient management plan? And then if we're going to do, so I guess it's a two-layer question, is the nutrient management plan then cost shared if that is part of the ordinance?
Talked about that a little bit last month. First of all, did you have anything else to add on the first part of my answer, Matt? No. Okay. I'm going to see if I can pop down to last month's slides, because we presented different scenarios last month where, remember there are certain situations where folks would need a winter spreading permit as well. And if they needed that, then they would need a nutrient management plan. Okay, so here we are. I'm in last month's slides. Okay. Okay, so here we go. If the farmer does not have a nutrient management plan and is used to applying manure during frozen periods of time, they would need to get a winter spreading permit. This is talking outside of the window of February to March. So February to March, hopefully no one's going to be spreading liquid manure. But let's say the soils are considered frozen early December. So from December through February, we would need to work with those folks to get a winter spreading permit. So we would essentially develop a permit system that is kind of like the light version of what we went through, what Dane County does. So this permit system would encourage people to get a nutrient management plan. It would encourage them to get it by saying, if you already have a nutrient management plan, perfect, because in that plan it shows you what fields you can apply on in those frozen soil periods. If someone does not have a nutrient management plan, then you have to get a winter spreading permit with us, and you have to submit those fields that you're going to use on an annual basis. So in every one of those scenarios, if a farmer was coming to us and would say, okay, I need to spread on frozen soils a couple months of the year, I do not have a nutrient management plan, then our first sentence to them would be, let's get you a nutrient management plan. And I feel like most of those scenarios, we would be able to offer them some type of cost sharing. So we have cost sharing available for lots of those people. If we were to run out of money, NRCS also has cost sharing for nutrient management plans as well, and we work extremely closely with them. But we would not be mandated to give people nutrient management cost share in order to ask them to do one. Our proposed plan essentially does offer people a choice whether or not they want to get a nutrient management plan right away or slowly in time. They can figure out what fields are safe to winter spread on in roundabout ways, but why not just do a nutrient management plan? Much easier.
All right, one more follow-up, and then I'm going to move on.
All right, one additional. So, I mean, at some point, they're going to be emptying this 60-day pit, and it would seem to me to be practical to have a nutrient management plan so that we're not spreading effectively April 1st on something that still could be frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo this. I'm glad that we are having this discussion. In 2023, the previous ERC approved $175,000 for a new aerator system for the Big O Plain. That's great, but to me, that's kind of like on the back end of the problem. So it's good to see that we're working to at least have discussion to cut the head off the snake. I as well had farmers in my area contact me, worried how this is going to affect them, and the ones that didn't, I reached out and talked to other ones. One of the concerns was this being slammed on everybody all at once. So I kind of told them that we should be able to do this in increments. So I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of outline of how this could be implemented if it was. The other concern they had was on an extraordinary event. Say spring of the year, ground still frozen, and we get 4 inches of rain dumped on us, and some of these manure pits start filling up. Will there be an avenue for them to at least get some of the manure out? And I would even go so far as, if we could do that, staff could work with them on the most appropriate part of their property with the right slope and the right vegetation, where they would be least harmful if they did have an emergency event where they had to evacuate some of their manure.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had.
I agree, and I'll just follow up to say that in our proposal, we did include in every category of folks that we listed out guidelines, the categories do all allow for emergency applications. of liquid manure if needed. So we do understand, Supervisor Ritter, and agree that those emergency situations absolutely do happen, which we want to have that caveat in there. Our hope would be that they do reach out to our staff and say, oh man, I'm in a pickle. We're, in a dangerous situation here, because we have agronomists on staff that can work with them and say, let's take a look at your fields. Let's look at the slope of your fields. Let's make sure we're picking the fields that are the safest to apply on and the furthest away from water. So I think as long as that communication happens, people really should not need to worry or be fearful of those what if scenarios, because we're used to working through a lot of those, and we're used to, farmers are good problem solvers. I could tell you stories of MacGyvering so many tricky situations with farmers, and there's no one else I'd rather do it with, because they can, at the end of the day, solve so many more problems quickly and easily in a very scrappy method compared to most of us. So I appreciate that.
Just one more comment on the concern for the smaller farm. One thing you haven't brought up is solid manure. I mean, instead of investing in storage, it's just investing in more bedding. So that's an option you're offering them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a math question for, I guess, Matt. So I know Matt has said there's like essentially 100 idle tanks in the county. If all those were active, would that be able to hold all of the county's manure for those 60 days?
I don't have an answer for that.
We have it on our list of data to come up with, though. It's literally, we talked about it this week, and it's because we had some great conversations last week, and retired scientist actually reached out with that idea. So be proud that a retired limnologist gave us that idea, and that same idea also popped into your head. So that is not going to be an easy lift to come up with an answer to that question, especially with some of the older pits where we don't have good data on them. It's not going to be an easy lift, but we also want to know the answer to that question, and I know you all do too, so I appreciate that.
Chair Gibbs?
Christie, when we start to look at that, could we also look at the proximity that they have in comparison to the farms that don't have storage, that would be requiring them to utilize storage? Because we can't make it cost prohibitive, forcing them to travel 10, 12 miles with, liquid manure in the wintertime.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other feedback questions for today? Otherwise, it sounds like you all have feedback that you'll be gathering at the Farm Bureau meeting on the 13th. So my thought was to just keep this on the agenda for next month, and we'll have some more discussion.
Yes,
Okay.
please. That sounds great.
All right,
Yeah,
sounds good. Thank you both for the
Cool.
presentation.
thank you.
All right, bringing this thing in for a landing here. 7, we got nothing. 8, next meeting, March 4th, 2025, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, future agenda items. A, committee members asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I don't have anything. All right. Item number 9, I'd like to make the motion. Supervisor Seefeld with the motion to adjourn, second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, staff.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
Heck of an experience.
But overall.